All right, let's dive in. Today we're going deep on Dr. Mauro di Pasquale's metabolic diet. And wow, this book, it really shakes things up. Like it kind of throws everything we thought we knew about weight loss right out the window.
Yeah, it definitely flips the script, especially when it comes to, that whole fat is bad thing we've all heard forever.
Right. It's like,
Yeah.
what if fat isn't actually the villain we've made it out to be?
Yeah.
This book, it makes a pretty strong argument drawing on all sorts of evidence, like everything from, how humans evolved to like examples of cultures today that thrive on diets with a lot of fat.
Yeah, the evolutionary perspective is fascinating. For most of human history, our ancestors primarily ate meat and whatever plant-based foods they could get their hands on, right? So like all these high-carb diets that are so popular now, they're actually pretty new in the grand scheme of things.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, if our bodies were basically designed to run on a different type of fuel, what does that mean for our health today? I mean, the book even points to groups like the Eskimos and the Maasai. They traditionally eat tons of fat, but historically they've been pretty healthy, right?
Yeah, and that really challenges that whole assumption we have that like fat automatically equals heart disease or, other problems.
It definitely makes you reconsider all those low-fat products we've been told are so good for us.
Hmm.
So, okay, if we're not supposed to be scared of fat, how does this metabolic diet actually work? What's the secret to it?
Well, the core concept is all about shifting your metabolism, making it a fat burning machine, basically. So the diet manipulates your insulin levels to kind of encourage your body to use stored fat for energy instead of always relying on carbohydrates, which is what we usually do.
So it's not just about like eating less. It's about actually changing how your body processes energy.
Exactly. And the book goes pretty deep into the science behind it,
Hmm.
talking about things like uh, ATP production, which is how our cells make energy.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. For those of us who haven't taken a biology class in like forever, can you give us a quick rundown of what ATP is?
Sure. So think of ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate, as like the energy currency of your cells. It's what powers everything your body does, from breathing to thinking to moving around. And the way your body creates ATP depends on what fuel source it's using.
So normally we're running on carbs, right? But this metabolic diet is trying to switch us over to fat burning mode.
Exactly. So the book argues that by, controlling insulin levels, we can trigger this process called lipolysis, which is basically breaking down stored fat for energy. It's like the opposite of lipogenesis, where your body converts excess carbs into stored fat.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So this diet is trying to like flip that switch. But what does all this science actually mean in terms of benefits? Does the diet like actually live up to the hype?
Well, according to the book, there are some pretty interesting advantages. For one thing, it claims to suppress appetite, which is huge for anyone who's ever, struggled with feeling hungry on a diet.
Yeah, I'm definitely all ears on that one. How does that work exactly?
So, the high fat and protein content in the diet, it supposedly triggers the production of this hormone called CCK or cholecystokinin.
Okay, another science word.
Yeah.
What does CCK do?
So, CCK is released by your intestines when you eat, and it signals to your brain that you're full. So, theoretically, by increasing CCK levels, the metabolic diet helps you feel satisfied longer. So, less cravings, and it's easier to stick to, your calorie goals.
That's pretty clever if it works. What
Yeah.
else does the book say?
It actually goes beyond just, appetite suppression. It talks about targeted fat loss, especially for men. So, it suggests that men tend to lose weight in their belly first on this diet.
Oh, interesting. I've always heard that belly fat is the hardest to get rid of, so that's a big plus.
Yeah. And it also talks about those energy crashes and mood swings that people often get on, typical high carb diets. So by stabilizing blood sugar levels, the metabolic diet claims to keep your energy more consistent and prevent those crazy fluctuations that can make you feel like irritable and drained.
So no more afternoon slumps. Sign me up.
And there's more. The book even suggests that burning fat for fuel can actually improve your endurance, especially for longer workouts or activities.
Wait, so instead of carb loading before a marathon, I could be fueling my body with fat.
That's the idea. It's definitely a different way of thinking about things. But the book argues that once your body adapts to burning fat, you can actually tap into way more energy than you can with just carbs.
So potentially we're talking more stamina, more endurance,
Mhm.
all while losing fat and getting toned. Okay, I have to admit, I'm starting to see the appeal. But what about the practical stuff? Like, is this something you can actually do in everyday life?
That's a great question. And that's where things get really interesting. So the metabolic diet isn't just, a list of what to eat and what not to eat. It's a structured plan with different phases to help you transition to this new way of eating.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about these phases and how it all works in practice. So we've talked about, like, the science behind it and the potential benefits. But let's get into, the actual how-to. What does it actually look like to follow this metabolic diet?
Well, the diet's broken down into these different phases, and what's kind of cool is that it really emphasizes like flexibility, which can make it, easier to stick with in the long run.
That's super important. I've tried diets before that were so strict, it was like setting myself up to fail.
Yeah.
So tell me more about these phases.
Okay, so it all starts with what's called the assessment phase. It lasts for 12 days, and it's pretty strict in terms of cutting carbs. You can think of it as like a metabolic reset. You're basically retraining your body to burn fat as its main fuel source.
Like hitting the reset button on, like, years of carb dependency?
Exactly. Then you move on to the moderate carb phase, where you gradually start adding carbs back in, but you're still maintaining that, fat burning state you established in the first phase.
Okay, that sounds a little more doable.
Yeah.
But what about those times when you just really want, like, a big bowl of pasta or a slice of cake? Does the diet, like, account for those moments?
It actually does. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. The metabolic diet actually includes a weekend carb load where you allow yourself to have more carbs.
Wait, really? That's not what I was expecting. I have to say, the idea of, like, guilt-free carbs on the weekend is pretty tempting.
Yeah, it's a smart approach, I think. It addresses like both the physical and the mental sides of dieting. By letting yourself have these planned indulgences, you're less likely to feel deprived and like totally fall off the wagon.
That makes sense. It's like if you restrict yourself too much, you're just going to rebel eventually.
Yeah.
But how does this carb load affect, like, the overall effectiveness of the diet?
So the book actually talks about that. The idea is that by increasing your carbs every now and then, you're actually preventing your metabolism from getting like too used to the low carb thing and becoming less efficient at burning fat. It's like, you're keeping your body guessing.
So it's not just about, like, satisfying cravings. It's a strategic way to boost your metabolism. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. But one thing I've been wondering about, with all this focus on fat and protein, what about fiber?
That's a really good point. And the book actually stresses how important fiber is, especially at the beginning of the diet when you're cutting way back on carbs, which usually means, eating less fruits and vegetables, which are high in fiber.
You got to make sure things are moving along smoothly.
Exactly. Fiber is essential for digestion. And it can also help you feel fuller for longer, which is, always a good thing when you're trying to lose weight.
Right. So beyond supplements, are there any, like, practical tips for making this diet work in real life? Because let's be honest, sticking to any kind of diet is hard, especially with, our busy lives and everything.
Yeah, totally. The book offers some good advice on that. It encourages you to be more mindful about your eating habits, like slowing down when you eat, really tasting your food, paying attention to like your body's signals of hunger and fullness, and adjusting your meal times based on those signals instead of just sticking to, a rigid schedule.
It's like remembering to actually listen to what your body's telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about, like, going out to eat with friends or those situations where you're at a party or something? Those can be tough when you're trying to follow a specific diet.
Yeah, for sure. The book acknowledges that those situations can be tricky, and it suggests some strategies for dealing with them, like being upfront about your dietary needs, asking for modifications to dishes or ordering a la carte to avoid like side dishes that don't fit your goals.
So it's about taking control of your choices and not being afraid to, like, advocate for your health, even when it feels like you're not in control of the situation.
Right.
But is it all about food choices and supplements? What about exercise? Where does that fit into the metabolic diet?
Exercise is a big part of it. And the book, it goes beyond just saying, get moving. It actually explains why exercise is so important for like maximizing the effects of the diet and getting the best results.
So it's more than just burning calories.
Yeah, it's about more than that. Exercise is crucial for increasing your BMR, your basal metabolic rate.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I totally get it.
So think of your BMR as like the number of calories your body burns just by existing, even when you're at rest. It's like your body's internal engine, always running in the background.
So the higher you BMR, the more calories you burn, even when you're not working out.
Exactly. And exercise is one of the best ways to increase your BMR. The more muscle you have, the higher your BMR will be.
So it's not just about losing weight. It's about building a more efficient, like, calorie-burning system. What kind of exercise does the book recommend for that? Is it all cardio, or is it a mix of things?
It recommends a combo of weightlifting and cardio. It emphasizes weightlifting for building muscle, which, like we said, is key for boosting metabolism.
So it's not about being skinny, it's about being strong and functional and changing your body composition.
Exactly. And that's where those supplements we talked about can come in handy. The book suggests that supplements can be helpful for, like, filling any nutrient gaps you might have from changing your diet, and also for supporting your body's recovery and muscle growth after those tough workouts.
So it's about giving your body what it needs to, thrive through both diet and supplements. But let's be real for a second. This all sounds really promising, but does the science actually back up all the claims this diet makes?
That's the big question, isn't it? The book definitely lays out a compelling argument. It talks about ATP production, hormone regulation, all the mechanisms behind fat burning.
But is that enough to, like, convince us? I mean, it's one thing to have a theory, it's another to have solid research to support it.
You're right. It's important to, approach any diet with a critical eye, especially one that challenges, like, conventional wisdom.
So how do we even start to, like, unravel that side of things? How do we look into the research? So how do we, like, go beyond just taking the book's word for it? How can we actually figure out if the metabolic diet is, scientifically sound?
Well, a few things we can do. One would be to look for what are called meta-analyses and systematic reviews on low-carb diets.
Okay, got to break that down for me. What are those exactly, and why are they important?
Think of them like super studies, basically. They analyze the data from a bunch of different individual studies, so you get a much bigger, more reliable picture of the evidence.
So instead of just looking at one study, which might not be, perfect or might even be biased,
Yeah.
we're looking at a bunch of data together.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like a much better way to do it.
And within those reviews, you want to pay attention to, like, how good the studies they included were. Were there randomized controlled trials? Those are, like, the gold standard for research. And were there any conflicts of interest? Anything that might have skewed the results.
That's a good point. It can be hard to, like, understand all the scientific stuff,
Yeah,
but it's definitely worth it to make sure you're getting, like, accurate information.
for sure. And it's important to remember that, research is always changing. What we know today might be different tomorrow because of new discoveries.
It's like we're all constantly learning, especially when it comes to our health.
Yeah.
But for someone who's not, like, a scientist or a researcher, where can they even start to find good information on this stuff?
Some good places to start are PubMed, Google Scholar, the Cochrane Library. They have huge databases of scientific research.
Those are good resources.
Yeah.
But even then, it can be overwhelming,
Right?
Like, where do you even begin to search?
Well, when it comes to the metabolic diet specifically, you could start by searching for things like low-carbohydrate diet or ketogenic diet, even metabolic diet itself. And then add keywords related to, like, the specific claims the book makes.
So, like, if I'm curious about the research on targeted fat loss,
Yeah.
or whether a low-carb diet actually improves endurance, I could add those terms to my search.
Exactly.
Okay, that's helpful. So as we wrap up our deep dive on the metabolic diet, what's the main takeaway for our listeners? For people who are interested in this approach, but maybe also a little unsure given all the questions we've been talking about.
I'd say approach it with, like, a healthy dose of curiosity, but also critical thinking. Do your own research. Talk to your doctor or a dietitian to see if it's a good fit for you. And most importantly, listen to your body.
And if you do decide to try it out, be sure to share what you learn with us. We're always learning too.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the metabolic diet. Until next time, keep those minds hungry for knowledge.
You can download the book for free from our website.